Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Truth on my YouTube channel. The big topic of today, Spurs and Thomas Frank. Has he really fixed them, or is there more bubbling underneath the surface? Sam and Jack are with me. On with the pod.
I chose this topic.
You did.
I'd say it's probably a 70-30 split on Dougie picking the topics here in the 70 and me on the 30. So I like to crow when I've come up with an idea because it's not that often. But I came up with this one. And the reason I came up with it is thus. A couple of my friends in the last week or so have texted me or texted in the group to say, Thomas Frank's doing a really good job at Spurs. And one said, and I quote, he's killing it. And this observation jarred with me a little bit because I didn't really agree just based on what I was watching. And, you know, I feel a bit unmoved by the job he's doing. I'm not necessarily a detractor. I'm not going to sit here and criticise him all evening, but I'm unmoved by the job he's done, and yet some people are really impressed. I go on social media, I see Tottenham fans who are not that happy with the football that they are being served up. So it's not hard to find fans of the club who are dissatisfied and may share my point of view. And yet you look at the table and you look at the points and they seem to be doing pretty well. Results undoubtedly quite good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose we are going to mainly focus on this season, but it is worth sort of talking about a little bit about what happened last season and the kind of situation that he walked in on. And the fact that we are talking about this probably also stems from the fact that so few Premier League clubs made changes this summer in terms of their manager. You know, Thomas Frank was appointed at Spurs after Ange Postecoglou was fired. Brentford obviously hired Keith Andrews, their set-piece coach. Other than that, there wasn't really any change. And yes, there has been change because Nottingham Forest then got rid of Nuno. Graham Potter was fired by West Ham. Nuno went to West Ham. Ange Postecoglou went to Forest. There's speculation that Ange Postecoglou might not have that much longer at Forest. We could probably do a Nottingham Forest episode coming up pretty soon, I would have thought. But Spurs had a very, very weird 24-25 campaign under Ange Postecoglou. They managed to win their first trophy in 17 years with the Europa League. They beat AZ Alkmaar, they beat Eintracht Frankfurt, they beat Bodo Glimt, and they beat Man United in one of my least favourite finals of my lifetime.
Yeah, it was rubbish, wasn't it?
It was a really dreadful game.
No, hang on. I was kind of gripped by it in a I don't know, in like a macabre way. I was a bit like it was such a desperate game of football between two teams that could not possibly lose.
Can't take your eyes off a car crash kind of job.
Yeah, that sort of thing. It was quite gripping. I'll give it its dues.
I enjoyed the people I watched it with and the place I watched it with. It was in a pub in South London. That made it a lot more entertaining. Yeah. And the fact that it mattered so much to Spurs and Man United fans, and I was watching with both of them, that was entertaining. But the game itself, pretty miserable. But in terms of their league campaign last year, they lost 22 league games. That was the joint most in the club's 143-year history, level with the 1934-35 season. So it's been a while. They hadn't lost more than 14 games.
Why do you have these stats?
They hadn't lost more than 14 games in a season since 2008-09, and even then it was only 15. They scored 64 goals, so there was no real problems in terms of going forward. That was joint 7th in the league. That was level with Chelsea. But they conceded 65. So Thomas Frank's main aim this season was improved dramatically on that 17th place finish last year. Contend, I think, for European football. I don't think anyone's went into this season being like, Spurs have to qualify automatically for the Champions League this year, but really shore up that defence as well. And last year, finishing with 38 points, 28 fewer than the previous campaign, it just simply couldn't be repeated. But I suppose, Sam, where we should probably start is with the positives, because results-wise, it's gone okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to talk about the results and the cold hard numbers here, the face value numbers, I should say, and I'm going to throw it back to you for the positives. But I'm taking the opposing view for the evening. So I'll leave the positives to you in a moment. I do have some myself. It's not all doom and gloom for me. But look at the table; they are third. Yeah. All right, the table is a complete lie at this point. But if you ignore that, the table looks good.
Is it a complete lie at this
stage?
It's
almost a complete lie. There are like three things that are happening that are real.
I'm really hoping that
Arsenal
there's
were
a bias in me.
Arsenal are the best team in the league, and Burnley are rubbish. These are facts.
But the table doesn't even suggest Burnley are as bad as they are.
But they are in the bottom three.
They are in the bottom three.
Aren't they bottom?
I think Wolves are bottom.
Wolves are bottom. That's right. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, producer Jack. Overlord Jack. Spurs are third. 4 wins from 7. Good. 14 points. 13 goals scored. Nice. Just 5 conceded. Also nice. Only Arsenal have conceded fewer, with 3. Into the Champions League, 4 points from 2 games. On paper, pretty good. They beat Villarreal at home, got the job done, and they got a point at Bodo Glimt, but more on that performance later. Results, are good. What I need to know is, and what I'd like to find out today is, are we looking at a Liverpool situation here where it's results over performances, which will unlikely to be a lasting effect, or have I gauged them wrong? And can you convince me that I've got these guys a little bit wrong? So let's start with the positives, and I'm going to hand you the microphone.
I think it's worth saying at this stage as well that I had the kind of privilege of producing a shoot with Thomas Frank actually yesterday as we record this. We were doing a feature. We didn't talk about you.
Did you mention my work? Because
No.
I'm about to mention his.
No, we didn't talk about your work or my work. We were with James Alcott and we were doing a tactical run through of his work at Spurs. We did it with him at Brentford at the end of last season. He was super engaging and he went through on a tactics board, everything that was unique about Brentford.
I did watch this last year.
Oh, good. Well, we did a similar sort of concept at Spurs yesterday, and it was fascinating seeing his kind of mood and how he assessed the opening few weeks of the season, and he was pretty candid about the whole thing, suggesting that there have been long parts of games they haven't played anywhere near their best, that he realises that results have maybe slightly flattered them at
this
times.
is great. This is great content. I'm loving this.
But he was extremely confident that things would improve pretty dramatically. And I think it is worth touching on the fact that they've played so far this season without Kulusevski, without James Maddison, without Yves Bissouma, debatable about whether that's a big issue for them. Dominic Solanke's also been out as well. But Maddison was directly involved in their joint most league goals last season. Kulusevski was 5th for league goals and assists. But you know with Kulusevski, sometimes the numbers don't tell the whole story. He is actually one of my favourite players in the entire league, Kulusevski, when he's on form, particularly against Man City. It's always against Man City. He is absolutely brilliant to watch. And there's also been a substantial change within the club in his early few weeks of the season. On the 4th of September, it was announced that Daniel Levy would be leaving the club after 25 years. Supposedly, most reports are that Joe Lewis, Spurs' owner and his family thought it was time for a change. The kind of wording of the statement was that Daniel Levy had stepped down. Supposedly, it was kind of step down or he'll be pushed. And effectively, they had made a few changes to the hierarchy above him in the last year or so. And it's a massive change because Daniel Levy has been very, very successful on a business side with Spurs. They have built this amazing stadium, this training ground that I was at yesterday. They have gone from a club worth £80 million when he took over, and some of this is inflation, but they are now currently valued at £4 billion. And they have competed in the upper echelons of the Premier League, despite their wages to turnover ratio being 42%, which is the lowest in the Premier League. Now, a lot of Spurs fans would say, that's really frustrating.
Yeah.
We could pay more on wages. We could be more successful. We could have won more than 2 trophies in his tenure. And we could have gone through less than 15 managers in your 25 years as well if he'd released the handbrake. But I think it's worth saying some of the positives of this season so far. So as you say, they are currently 9th in the Champions League. They are currently 3rd in the Premier League. That win against Man City was probably the statement win of the Frank era so far. They've actually got a phenomenal record against Man City. Pep has lost 10 of his 24 matches in all competitions against Spurs. He's only won 11. I say only won 11. It's still a positive record. But Spurs, more than any other side, have caused Pep huge issues.
Yeah, they have. And while it's tempting to say, well, then that's, less to do with Frank and more to do with Spurs, I was considered Son as the City killer, the Pep killer, and he's gone. So Frank did it without Son. I'm giving him the win on this one. I think that's very fair. I will say his game plan for City I thought was very good. And a few weeks before that, maybe not even, his game plan for PSG in the Super Cup was also very good. And I know that game ended up in a very familiar, everyone laughs at Spurs because they were 2-0 up against a half-fit team, and in the 85th minute, they were 2-0 up and they still managed to lose on penalties. It felt a bit Spursy, unfortunately for them. But the game plan was bang on for 85 minutes. Really, really good. Back three, Kudus up front with Richarlison. Set pieces working. Really, really good. And went into that City game and had an equally good plan and got the win, 2-0. I will give him unending credit for those things.
Yeah. One of the things that we talked about when we spoke to him last season and this season, and when I say we, I mean Sky Sports, but we, for this context, I wasn't actually doing the questioning, but it's something that I spotted last year in the data as well. Brentford have always been one of the best clubs in the league at maximising the chances of their shots going in. And he's replicated that at Spurs already.
Has he?
So in terms of their XG or their goals per shot, they're at 0.16, which is the best record in the Premier League. And again, this is something that happened at Brentford, which he's taken over to Spurs. They're taking shots in fantastic areas. Only Brentford, West Ham and Arsenal are taking shots from closer to goal than their 15.3 yards. So it does feel like he's managed to encourage Spurs to play in a similar style, or at least be as pragmatic in forward areas as Brentford were. And he managed to explain it in really simple terms for this YouTube video yesterday as well, that if you are within 20 yards of the goal and you're on your strong foot and you are in control of your body, he's very happy with you shooting. But if you're taking pot shots from 25 yards out on your weaker foot, on the run, with no balance, he's going to be absolutely fuming.
He's going to hate Joao Paulinho.
I don't know, man. Already bailed him out with one goal. He'd hate me. I did exactly what you just described. 25 yards out from goal, off balance, weak foot. I took a shot on Monday night and it went so far wide.
Well done for even taking it. I can't even use that foot. It's
I would
just
say well done
there.
is the result there.
No, I'm sure your teammates weren't too happy either. But there have been some performances. There have been some positives in their performances of individual players as well. I think Mohammed Kudus has been the real star, especially as the kind of pressure signing. I know Xavi Simons was obviously signed as well, big reputation, but he signed so late in the window. Kudus was the player with an established Premier League record, had a really disappointing season at West Ham last year, looked really frustrated by the changes behind the scenes and the kind of mood behind the club. He was playing like quite an aggravated player. But so far this year, 5 league goals and assists, really good. Stepped up in difficult moments against Leeds in their game before the international break as well. Got a goal and an assist. Only Haaland with 10 and Semenyo with 9 have contributed more goals in the Premier League. He leads Spurs for chances created. He's completed the most dribbles in the entirety of Europe. He's a fantastic player to watch. And yesterday, it was interesting hearing Frank saying that we are kind of building up a lot of our play off his ability to hold up the ball with his back to defenders as well. Yeah. And one of the first goal against City, the Brennan Johnson goal, comes from him holding up the ball really effectively, then popping it back and playing in Sarr, who then runs down the wing, plays it to Brennan Johnson, who steadied himself really effectively. Yeah. And he's doing it with a very young squad as well, which has to be noted. So their average age of their squad this year is 24.6, which is only topped by Chelsea and my club, Sunderland. So those are the kind of positives that I could kind of get from the data and from the feel of the club so far. I do have more on the negative side, but I think they really deserve credit for coming off a really terrible season last year and kind of righting the wrongs, because they've only had more points at this stage of a season after 7 games once since 2018-19, which is Pochettino's second to last season at the club. So generally, results, the big positive.
For sure, yeah. Just on the Kudus thing as well, just a few more stats to throw in. Only 4 players have started all 7 Premier League games so far this season. Kudus is one of them. The other 3, the goalkeeper and the 2 centre-backs, which you don't change unless you absolutely have to, which gives you an indication of, first of all, how important Kudus already is to this team, and second of all, how well he's playing, because even if he felt important, if he wasn't doing the business, he wouldn't be in the team. Even Pedro Porro has stepped out for a game. And there's another stat I can throw in here. Kudus has been involved in 202 open play sequences. What a sexy stat that is. Well, that means absolutely nothing to you. It is quite rare for a winger to be involved in more sequences than any other player on his team. It's usually, because like Virgil van Dijk will be in every sequence for Liverpool, be that. So Kudus being at the heart of it all really is cemented in the stats, and the only proper winger who is higher up in that list is Jack Grealish at 208, and we all know that Everton's tactics right now are effectively Grealish ball, and it just gives you an idea of how much play is flowing through that player. So Grealish and Kudus have a very similar warping effect on the way their teams play, which is a positive one, which is great. I've already mentioned the game plans, and just to key in a little bit more on the set pieces, this is a classic Thomas Frank thing. He always tries to find those little edges, and I think their set pieces, their stats haven't exactly popped off, but they've been pretty good. There was a very infamous picture floating around on social media in the summer because he held long throw auditions, which I think a lot of people found very funny. But I think a lot of people don't realise that you never know who's got a long throw, and you really should just line all the players up and see how far they can throw it, because there's no rhyme or reason to who can throw far and who cannot, and you'll be surprised at the results. So he's done a good job there, and the 2 goals against PSG were both from set pieces, and they gave Bodo a lot of trouble with them as well whenever they managed to get a dead ball. So for me, those are the positives from Thomas Frank so far. Negatives?
Let's go for it.
Right, just a deep drink of water before I begin. Right. There have been some really bad performances. There just have. Yeah. And I think there is a tendency sometimes to get lost in these, and maybe I fully accept the fact that what I witnessed against Bodo Glimt was so horrifically bad that it has actually coloured a lot of what I'm seeing. I'm very open to that conclusion. So I wanted to make it an episode, make it a discussion. But wow, were they terrible against Bodo Glimt. And they did come out of it with a 2-2 draw. But in a way, that's quite fitting because that's been the story for them a few times this season. Thomas Frank appears to have acknowledged it himself and that the results have slightly flattered them a little bit. Like, really bad against Bodo Glimt, really bad against Wolves and bailed out by a João Palhinha 94th minute equaliser. Really bad against Bournemouth and should have lost by more than one goal. Really bad. 0.2 XG generated on that day, which is a statistic that will annoy Thomas Frank because he's one of the few managers we know will actually have a look at that and reference it. I also wasn't that impressed with them against Leeds before the international break. Really not that
Scrappy
impressed.
Game, wasn't
it gave up 1.8 XG. Okay, not great. The Okafor goal was very, very, very close range. Vicario didn't cover himself in glory. Joe Rodon hit the post, and the 2 goals they scored were both deflections. So while I appreciated a lot of what those players brought to the table on the day, they were a little bit fortuitous. That is 4 or 5. That is 4 or 5 examples there of performances that I'm not particularly moved by. And they've only played about 10 games, right? So that's about half of them. And I'm not going to get into the business of discrediting wins here, but they got Burnley at home on the opening day, which is the most beautiful layup that you can possibly ask for. And they were one of the lucky few to get Graham Potter's West Ham, which will, by the end of the season, look like a genuine, bona fide treat. So, is all of this just me being too influenced by a couple of bad performances, or is there a backbone to this? And so I had a look at the stats, and the face value stats look quite good. You know, goals conceded, only 5. Goals scored, looking good. Points. The expected points table does not like Tottenham Hotspur.
Does not.
Opta's model has them in 14th in the league, and Understat's model has them in 13th. The XGA, expected goals against, is 8.7 compared to 5 actually allowed, which suggests they've been a little bit lucky in terms of how many they've conceded to. That was a bit of a monologue, so I'll bring you back in, Dougie, but you see why I'm concerned and why I'm puzzled. And when someone texts me and goes, wow, he's really killing it, and I'm like, is he?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on the attack as well, kind of a stat that really stood out to me is they've overperformed in terms of defence and their expected goals against, but they've also overperformed in their attacking sense as well. By 5.4, they scored 5.4 more goals than the stats and the positions they've shot from generally suggest they should have. And only 2 sides in Europe have topped that, and that's Sevilla and Bayern Munich, who have been finishing exceptionally well. Bayern, I mean, everyone's seen Harry Kane this season so far. Yeah. There are only 6 sides in the division that are conceding more shots per game, which is something, again, you don't really feel like that's a very Thomas Frank sort of style, which is level with winless Wolves. And of those games that you've really already pinpointed that they didn't necessarily create enough, so 3 games they've created less than 0.8 XG, Bournemouth, Wolves and Leeds, and they took 4 points from those. You take 4 points off their tally, and yeah, they'd still be fairly comfortable. They'd be in the top half, but I think they'd be level on points with Man United, and no one would agree that Man United have had a good start to the season whatsoever.
This is why I said the table's a lie, by the way. It's like the swings are, at this early stage, the swings are pretty violent. So it's not to discredit anything that anyone's done so far, but these points tallies can be a little bit finicky at this point. Yeah.
And I don't think, you mentioned Bodo Glimt, I don't think they pulled up any trees in their win against Villarreal on the opening match week as well. There are only 6 sides in the entire Champions League that have created less XG in the opening 2 games. And yes, you played Villarreal, a tough game, and Bodo Glimt away, a tough game for sort of circumstance reasons as well. Yeah. But, you're in the Champions League now. You can make a case that most of these games are going to be tough in their own way as well. So I've been slightly underwhelmed by them stylistically. What I would say is, though, they have been bedding in Xavi Simons, Kudus, Solanke's been out, Odebear's still learning on the job. They're trying to adapt to a sunless world. And
don't say sunless world.
Well, you know what I mean, though. A Son Heung-min-less world.
I loved that. That was exceptional. Great stuff.
A world without suns.
The idea that you could call this era of Tottenham the sunless world is just excellent.
Very dark again. Very dark.
Get that going.
Yeah.
And so there's just been so much change there. And I think there are some players in that forward line that are clearly more project players than ready right now. Matthias Tell, I think, has largely been pretty disappointing since joining from Bayern, especially the reputation that he had there. You know, this was a real...
Not played much though, has he?
Not played that much, but still I don't think he's pulled up any trees when he has. Brennan Johnson is such a weirdly wonderful footballer in that the guy scores goals. Like, you cannot take that away from him.
He scores one type of goal.
He was their top scorer in all competitions last year, but the least sort of glitzy and exciting and electric player to watch, and quite an uncomfortable player to watch at points as well. So there are a lot of moving parts in that forward line. He was actually quite interesting yesterday as well. I feel like maybe I'm over talking about this one experience with him, but it is so relevant for this. He was like, we will play maybe 55 games this year. We will play 8 to 10 perfect games. And a lot of the other games will be quite ugly. They won't be everyone on point. And especially with the schedule that they've got now, we've been talking about this on The Truth for the last 2 years. It's just impossible to play at your best every game. And it's about timing your runs and timing your form, etc. And he said there are some key players in my squad that I can rely on when shit gets real, basically. And he was like, João Palhinha is absolutely essential to that because he is a 7 out of 10 every time. And you know that he is always going to deliver on what he is good at. Winning duels, winning the ball back, intercepting, reading the game, basically leadership and sort of physical aggression.
Intensity. He brings intensity. Sure.
And you can also look at their goalkeeper and 2 centre-backs who are all part of the leadership group as well. And he was commending the kind of sort of way they have adapted to this new system, which is so different for centre-backs. Ange Ball and Frank Ball is kind of polar opposite in terms of where you're standing, how much you're over-committing, the kind of stresses that you're asked to play in that Ange system. And I bet Romero in particular is probably just loving being a little bit more set, being a little bit tighter, a little bit better organised, and being less... He's always going to be front-footed, but starting from a deeper position and giving you a little bit more control in your actions. There are some players in this squad as well that I think have the potential to become really, really top players. I think Bergvall, I don't know whether you saw his miss for Sweden. That's horrendous, but, you know, everyone has those moments.
Even the best strikers miss from very close range and are just after they may collide with the post.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, poor guy. But yeah,
that's an Ollie Watkins joke for those of you that don't know.
Yeah. Who's now injured, which is unfortunate. But yes, Bergvall has started the season, I think, really, really well. I love the way Sarr is becoming so much more well-rounded than when he first broke onto the scene and looked just like he was a sort of pure energy guy. And then Destiny Udogie, I don't think he's put together 6 months of really consistent performances yet in the Premier League, but there's so much to love about the kind of all-round package he's got. And I do think he could become one of the best left-backs in the Premier League as well, and potentially in Europe too. So the tools are there. But so far, I kind of agree with you. I have been slightly underwhelmed when I've watched them.
Yeah. Okay. Skip around a little bit. I was going to maybe key in on just some of the questions over Frank's tactics so far, I guess. But just on the subject of like the room for growth and those players, I think Udogie, because he was delayed coming into the season, I think he's been really, really good since he's come in. Like really good. A couple of performances that he's put together that I've been really, really impressed by. Him, Jed Spence, Pedro Porro, 3 fantastic fullbacks to call upon. This is a deep squad, genuinely deep squad, although they are getting hit with a few injuries already, unfortunately. Xavi Simons, you know he vexes me.
Yeah, you've never liked him.
But I watch him play for Spurs and I'm like, you could unlock this team. You could add levels to this team's attack that no one else that's fit, because Maddison is injured, no one else can. Watching him against Leeds, watching like.
Did you see the Rabona?
Yeah, I mean, that was a bit silly. Maybe you see what I mean. Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, why did you do that? And Romero would have said it in much more harsh terms to him because he was the one that was through on goal. Had it gone through, use your left foot. Yeah, Simons. I mean, he passes and sees passes like Martin Odegaard does on the edge of the box, and very few players can really do that. It's just about executing. But if you've got a player like that, and he was so good at finding space in the left half space as well, he was stalking the left half space. At least didn't really have an answer for it. He frustrates me, but I know he's good. Like I accept that he has that quality, and he's the only player that's fit in this team that can elevate this team in that way, and will possibly be the key to lifting this team into better performances once he's really up and running, because you say he arrived pretty late. And I think there's a chance that Wilson Odobert does a similar thing. he looks very talented. And he had a bit of a broken up season last season for various reasons, injury part of it, Son being on the left flank another part of it. But by the end of the season, we could easily be looking at a first choice front three of Odegaard, Simons and Kudus. And if they blossom in tow, I mean, wow, this could be really good. Like there is a high ceiling for this Tottenham side, and Thomas Frank is a part of that. It's only just getting started, in my opinion. But there's growing pains to go through. And some of these performances we can attribute to various different things. No, you can't play your best every game. Yes, there's been a lot of change. There have been injuries. But one of the criticisms of Frank so far is that he has been quite negative or quite cautious. And this was probably my concern with the appointment in the first place, which is if you take a manager who has been a tactically reactive manager for as long as he has, and just put him in charge of one of the top clubs in the country and say, play, there's an expectation that you are proactive, not reactive. And I think he is making that transition live in front of us, and he's struggling with it a little bit. He took a lot of flack, and rightly so, for playing Wolves at home, who have been the worst or second worst team in the league this season, and he put Bentancur and Palhinha in there together, Bergvall as the 10. Why?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? And it nearly resulted in like a genuinely drastic loss there. Like, that would have been really bad. This whole narrative around Tottenham and Thomas Frank right now wouldn't be the same if they'd lost at home to Wolves off the back of losing at home to Bournemouth. It just wouldn't be the same. So that was a near miss there, and I'm seeing that, and I'm recognising that, and I'm sort of refusing to get carried away by it all, because there's growing pains for everyone here, and that includes Thomas Frank, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of the Spurs fans that I follow on Twitter have kind of had their issues with the Bentancur-Palhinha double pivot at points, and how negative they can be in possession. And you kind of know that. And they do have the option of playing Bergvall deeper. They could even play Sarr, who I do think is a lot braver, particularly with his movement, than both of those players as well.
Yeah, but he's better getting ahead of the ball, isn't he? This is the problem, isn't it? Who does Thomas Frank turn to in terms of central midfield ball progression? Like, look at the personnel that he has, and who do you actually put in instead? So Palhinha and Bentancur feels too negative, but Bentancur is probably their best progressive passer. And fans don't think he's good enough at it. Palhinha is an absolute zero in terms of progressive passing. Bergvall is a carrier. He's a terrier. He's a short-range guy. I don't think he's a progressive passer. The stats certainly seem to agree with me there. And Sarr is let's get ahead of the ball, let's run the channels. Why didn't they sign Douglas Luiz? Dougie, where is Thomas Frank's Douglas Luiz, you know? Yeah. And so I am tempering my own criticism of this, because I look at the options and I'm like, well, no wonder he needs Pedro Porro to get the ball up from the back to the front. And no wonder so much of the play is being funneled through Kudus, because where else would you go with it?
That would also, that will be fixed when injuries come back. I think one thing that some Spurs fans might sort of have issue with is the labelling of him as a really defensive coach. Because look, I think at Brentford, he always maximised the kind of scoring and numbers of a set of forwards that I wouldn't necessarily say were elite when he got their hands on them. And he took them to really top levels. Yeah. And he always, fine, it might not have been like completely open chaos in terms of the structure, but I feel like he always had a plan to upset the opposition, and whether that was through set pieces or some sort of counter pressing or a change of formation mid-game, he feels so much more flexible than an Ange Postecoglou, and it feels like the spirit in the group is so much better as well. How many times over the last couple of years have we seen Spurs just crumble? How many times last year would they come back from 2-0 down at Brighton? How many times would they score in the last minute when they're losing a game against Wolves? Like, it just feels like they're on the right track, and I feel like the sprinkling of better quality in forward areas and more time together, I think they could achieve something solid this season. I think they could qualify for the knockouts of the Champions League and contend for that 5th Champions League spot, which is probably what I'd expect before a ball was kicked.
What I think is really interesting, and it's a little bit of a side point, but I feel like it's a tangent we can go down, is the misuse of the word pragmatism. like constantly.
Yeah.
Like people talk about progressive managers and pragmatic managers as if that's attack and defense.
We've not used that phrase, have we?
No, I know, but like as in Thomas Frank is to me the definition of a pragmatic manager.
Yeah.
He's someone that looks at the things available to him and he gets the best tune out of what's on the table. Now, that isn't always the way, and I don't think that it means that, you know, one is better than the other. I think there are some managers who are clearly system based, and that works for certain managers and it doesn't work for others. Frank is someone who obviously has his own philosophy about how the game should be played, 100%, but he works with the tools available to him. That's what pragmatism means, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that people sometimes get mixed up. I'll often say Thomas Frank's a very pragmatic coach, and they'll be like, he's not defensive. That's not what I said.
It's not what
it's
it
not
means.
what I said at all. It's not what it means. But I think in the modern parlance, it's kind of come to kind of represent that, which I think is unfair and potentially why Thomas Frank sometimes picks up that label of being a defensively minded manager.
Yeah, because I think we call managers like, who is the most likely manager to be called a pragmatist? Well, it's managers of a certain type, so it's going to be Sean Dyche, Sam Allardyce, those guys. Now, they are pragmatists. They're also defensive, right? They are, but it's two different things. So I think the two have become fused together. Conflated, I guess, in terms of their
like
meanings.
as a counterexample, like I don't think Scott Parker is a pragmatist. I just think he's a defensive manager. Like I don't think that Scott Parker
I thought you were
gets
going to say something else then.
No, but like I don't think he gets the best out of the pieces available to him. Like I've seen
He definitely
him,
doesn't.
Like as in I've seen a variety of reasons they do this, and look, there could be there's an argument to suggest that in the Championship things are different and whatever. But like he's only ever got promoted with teams that have overpowered for the division, right? And I think that there is a level of that you go, oh, okay, well he can do it in the Championship, but he can't do it in the Premier League. But that's someone who I would call a defensive manager who isn't a pragmatist, like who doesn't get that. And I think that distinction sometimes comes into play and is a negative thing for Thomas Frank.
Sure, fair enough. Just quickly then, what is the genuine, true opposite of a pragmatist? Someone who doesn't get the best out of their...
Well, it's someone who's philosophy based, right? Like system based. You'd probably argue that currently the person you would use as this example is Ruben Amorim.
Or Ange Postecoglou.
Or Ange Postecoglou. Yeah, absolutely. People who are wedded to their philosophy and therefore are trying to stick square pegs in round holes when it comes to it. Now, I don't necessarily think that's an issue, because I think that there are certain elements of that you need to actually succeed at the top level. I think that managers who tend to be a bit more flexible don't tend to be able to trend towards the top. Carlo Ancelotti is the alternate example. But you look at it and you think in the modern game, you tend to find managers who are very philosophical at the top, like Luis Enrique, for example. And I suppose that is the opposite of a pragmatist as opposed to someone who's just progressive.
Yeah, and they can come in many different forms, because Luis Enrique is one. I think Bielsa is probably another. And they play slightly different football.
They do indeed. They do indeed. What's quite interesting is kind of trying to see where Spurs could go this season, because you look at the top of the Premier League table and there's like two clear outliers in Bournemouth and Crystal Palace, like flying this season. And I think on the basis of A, their performances, and B, their underlying numbers this season, both of those sides feel considerably ahead of Spurs right now, which, given the fact that Spurs spent, I think it was the third most in the league in the summer, and yes, they're coming in with new management, but, you know, Kudus, Simons, over £50 million, and a lot of players that they had on loan last year made permanent, which ramps that up as well. But I think a lot of Spurs fans would be seriously disappointed to finish behind Crystal Palace and Bournemouth, but Crystal Palace's attack is really clicking right now, especially given the fact they've lost Eberechi. I don't think any side has created more XG than them. And Bournemouth's defence, I think, is third best by expected goals against, despite having an entirely new defence entirely. And, you know, maybe those managers will be poached at some stage this season. We're not quite sure. But I think Spurs fans, having thought fifth feels like a sort of, not a bare minimum, but we'd really like to get it back up there and feel confident in our ability to do that. It feels quite touch and go with the way their numbers are right now.
Sure, true. I guess so. I mean, look, with Palace, beware the European commitments and how that might take its toll over the course of a season. Bournemouth fell apart last year because they had such a thin squad. I think they've made moves to address that, and they do look like a deeper team. I mean, we've already seen it. They started the season. They opened up the season at Anfield with like no midfield, and they gave Liverpool a right good go with Tyler Adams and Marcus Tavernier in central midfield. So that shows you how far they've gone. And now they have players like Ben Gannon-Doak to bring off the bench rather than Daniel Jebison, for example. It will make a difference, but we'll see. I mean, 38 games takes a long time.
Absolutely.
There's lots of things to go. But back onto the here and now, actually, and what could we make of Spurs in the coming weeks? I mean, There's been a few murmurs of a very difficult run of fixtures on paper coming up for Spurs. Let's see what they're made of, is the kind of narrative surrounding the following run. Aston Villa at the weekend, Monaco, Everton away, which does make a difference because the new stadium.
Absolutely.
Newcastle, Chelsea, Copenhagen, which I'm going to, Man United, Arsenal, PSG, all before December even starts. Fulham is also in there. So usually you would say, what a tough run. Got a little giggle from Jack there.
They'll win that one.
They'll probably win that one. Joel Pellegrini with a header from a corner. Usually you'd say this is going to be the real making of a team like Spurs. I honestly think that I'm going to get to the end of this run, and no matter how good they were, I'm still going to have my questions. Because almost all of these games are against teams that like to have the ball. And so for me, I'm going to learn very little, because I already know that Thomas Frank, ever the pragmatist, can come up with a fantastic one-game plan that is different to last week and different to next week to take advantage of a team like this. He will scheme for Villa and probably beat them because he's very good at that sort of thing. He will scheme for Chelsea and probably beat them because him versus Maresca, I would back.
I feel like they've got a really bad recent record in that game.
Tottenham can't beat Chelsea. That's one of the rules.
Oh, that's true. Okay, maybe not that one then. But he'll come up with a few good game plans here, and they'll do fine. They'll do absolutely fine.
But is that not success? I absolutely take what you're saying. But as in, if they get to the end of this run and they've won 6 of those games, drawn 3 of them, and lost 2, they'll still be in the position they're in the table, and that's almost half a season.
Oh yeah.
So there is a point here, and I think that I absolutely take the points that both of you have been making on this. But I feel it's just been fine. I completely agree that it hasn't been great. I completely agree that there are elements of this that I'm not completely convinced. But I didn't think I was ever really going to be at the start of October. I feel like they've done what they needed to do, and if they do what they need to do over the next 10 games, then I don't know if you can still have the same reservations, even if they're not the games that you're necessarily wanting to see them in.
But I have reservations over Thomas Frank being able with a certain game state or a certain game setup.
Yeah, but no one expects Spurs to win the title or even win win a Champions League, win a cup. No one's expecting that from the same regard. So is he not just succeeding within the parameters he's currently given?
I don't know. I think people expect Tottenham to beat Bournemouth, Leeds, etc., and as is tradition, maybe have a tougher time against Man United, Arsenal, whatever.
Right. I see what you mean.
And, so I want to see Thomas Frank coach a really good proactive game against a good sample size of your Bournemouths and Leeds and all that, and I want to see it, and then allied with the fact that I think he's probably going to get quite a lot of points out of these games, I'll jump on board. I'm in. I'll drink the Kool-Aid. The Kool-Aid that my friends clearly are drinking based on the WhatsApp texts. But for now, I'm just holding back a little bit. Jack, I haven't sat here and criticised him so much as doubted whether or not a lot of the sort of praise that he's getting right now is 100% fully deserved. Is he killing it at Spurs? If you watch the games, probably not. They shouldn't have as many points, they shouldn't have as many wins, they should have conceded more, and they should have scored fewer. Is it a Liverpool situation? I don't know. Maybe they come out of the international break and they lose 3 in a row. And then this whole thing changes again. They won't lose 3 in a row because they'll beat Villa at the weekend. But you know what I mean? It's the whole thing changes again, just as it did with Liverpool very suddenly. Bang, last week, 3 losses in a row. What the hell? It's very much undetermined for me. And I'm just a little bit confused by the rush to crown him when ultimately, I think you just said it, it's been all right.
Yeah. But then it's been all right coming off the worst season that they've ever had domestically.
True.
Since, what did I say, 1934-35.
Something like that, yeah. I'm with you.
He was starting a really difficult season. Well, I was about to say difficult season for Spurs. In many ways,
but also
quite
the bar
easy.
was on the floor,
right? The bar was on the floor domestically.
It's all over the place.
But he's still got and some Spurs fans are still how are we getting away with this? This is outrageous.
And he never played in the Champions League proper. I think he got Brøndby into the qualifiers. So this is a new challenge for him as well. They've got 4 points from those games. It was almost a free run this season, and he's got a side into the top 4, not playing particularly well, who have just lost the kind of off-the-pitch totem and most divisive figure as well of their last 25 years that took up so much airspace and debate. And he's done so without 2 of their best attacking players, and they've probably lost, some Spurs fans would say, the best player of their last 10, 15 years in Son. Some Spurs fans have him above Harry Kane, and there's an argument for it. So all things considered, I think to be in the position that he is in deserves a fair amount of credit. And I really want him to succeed. I'm getting a bit personal now, but he is, for me, probably the most likeable manager in the Premier League as well. I find him very, very engaging, and he's a bit of he knows how to work the media to his advantage, but I also just think he's a thoroughly nice guy and it comes across like that as well. So I wanted
carries
to
a lot
work
of goodwill, and there is a reason for that, and I think it's because he treats people very well, media included.
Exactly.
The nicest guy in the Premier League, by the way, just for the record, is Andoni Iraola, and I've never met him, but he just looks really normal, so that's got to be...
In my experience, it's,
something.
of the ones I've met, which isn't everyone, obviously, Eze or Thomas Frank are my favourites, personally.
There you go. Right. So I'm gonna call Spurs a bit of a chin scratcher for me. That's where I'm going to leave them.
Feels like they're on a bit of a knife edge.
It could go south. It may not. What a take. What a wild take in this.
But that's what this podcast is for.
Is that the truth?
The truth is they've been all right.
But that's what this podcast is for. I mean, it's a contentious topic. We don't have the biggest sample size. I think we've put out a lot of positives. We put out a lot of negatives. That's kind of what it's all about.
It is what it's all about. Yeah, I am a bit perplexed by the Lovin. And at the same time, I am not sitting here and I'm not firing bullets at him. They've probably overperformed slightly in the table in terms of results. And we'll see what happens over the next few weeks. It went south very quickly for Liverpool when they were overperforming in terms of results. It could happen for Spurs. Then again, we've talked about how Xavi Simons can come in and light up this team and take it further on. Udogie is back. They'll get others back soon. Solanke at some point. They could hit new levels. They could work. They could go stride and stride with Thomas Frank as he finds his feet at this level, and so do they. We'll see. I'm not sure. I'm glad that you didn't come in and be like, no, he's brilliant. He's been amazing, because I would have had a real fight with you.
No, I was very much... I'm not on the fence. I'm like, I respect the job he's done. I respect the manager he is. But there's nothing to there's nothing to go seriously hot on or seriously down on at the moment. It's just, he's doing all right.
Tune in for next week for more tepid takes. That's the way that makes the world go round, don't they? Tepid takes.
They do, but then I think there's also space for it as well. You know, there's so much noise all the time. You know, it doesn't need to be the most dramatic thing in the world every single week. Sometimes it's just nice discussing the pros and cons.
There you go. Well, there you go. I think we've discussed the pros and cons. pretty seriously.
Yeah, we have.
Great stuff. Well, thank you, Dougie.
Thank you very much, Sam.
Thank you, Sauron.
Thank you, Sam. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. I think he's doing a perfectly fine job, is exactly how I'd put it. And I think it will get better generally over the course of the season. I don't know if it'll get better in terms of the performances. I think it might stick at this kind of level, but in terms of the results, sorry.
Yeah.
I think it might stick at this kind of level. I think the performances might come up to match them in terms of the results. And that, I think, would be a win from a Thomas Frank perspective.
I think it would, absolutely. If he does that, then they probably finish in the top 5. And that's really, really what you can ask for at this point. Okay. Thanks to you, Rank Squad. Thanks for listening. And we will see you same time next week.
Thank you so much for watching another episode of The Truth on my YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this, Spurs fans or neutrals, get in the comments. Let me know what you enjoyed. Let us know what you want us to see cover next week as well. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you next week.